Hey everybody, Holly Watkins with the ARC of North Carolina. We are here today to talk about the top 5 things that you need to know about Medicaid as it relates to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Now, look, we know that Medicaid is a huge topic. It's got a lot of different pieces. We're only going to be discussing Medicaid at a high level today, but fear not, because we are going to make several videos coming up that talk about some of the pieces that we discussed today. So we've got a lot to cover. Let's jump right in. I want to introduce our Deputy Director here at the ARC of North Carolina, Lisa Poteat. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Holly.
As I said, we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. First question. What is Medicaid for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Well, that's a doozy, Holly. Good question. That's a big one. And
big one.
Medicaid is huge, right? Medicaid is huge in our state. So I think that, the big broad answer for folks with IDD and their families is Medicaid is health insurance, right? That's what people need to remember. It is health insurance that is partially federally funded, partially state funded. It is for people who have lower incomes. Good news is our state just expanded Medicaid, so you can make a little bit more money and be eligible for Medicaid. It can cover doctor's visits. It can cover specialty therapies like PT, OT, speech therapy. It can cover other medical services. And for folks with IDD, there are some Medicaid-funded specific services that they can receive. We can go into those a little bit later. I do want to say, in our state and in most states, if you're not already receiving Medicaid, then you need to go through your local Department of Social Services to apply for Medicaid, and they will go through their process of determining eligibility. There are many different types of Medicaid for a variety of different people in different situations, but for the most part, most people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in North Carolina can qualify for Medicaid. It is an income-based system for qualification. So if your family has a lot of money, you may not be eligible. But there are also some differences there that can create some eligibility. So it's always worth applying at your local DSS office to figure out if you're eligible.
Right. Okay. Second question. So what will Medicaid do for someone with intellectual and developmental disabilities, also known as IDD?
Yeah, it'll do a lot. It will serve as your health insurance to pay for your doctor's visits or any medical services or treatment that you may need. And it can pay for some community-based services that can help you live in the community or live in your home, some types of personal assistance and direct supports that you may need or that your family may need.
So you mentioned supports and services. Who handles or manages the supports and services?
So that's an interesting distinction that we need to make sure people are aware of, because while you're going to DSS to apply, once you're eligible and there are services that you can apply to receive, that runs through a different system in our state. There are 4 entities across the state that manage these Medicaid-funded services for folks with IDD. And I'll go west to east and name them: VIA, Partners, Alliance, and Trillium. So they are called, and this is a string of letters, be careful, I'll explain, LME/MCO. So that stands for Local Management Entity. They're the local entity that's managing services. The MCO stands for Managed Care Organization, and our state is in a managed care model. So they're trying to manage, give people the services they need, manage the dollars at a sustainable level across the Medicaid budget. Now, just to make these terms a little more complicated, in July, those LMEs, for short, will also begin administering the state's tailored plan. So you might even hear tailored plan or TP as the initial referring to those 4 LMEs across the state. Again, those west to east are VIA, Partners, Alliance, and Trillium. And the tailored plan that's going to launch in July is kind of a subset of the work they are doing to further manage services for people with the most intense needs who have IDD, traumatic brain injury, significant mental illness, or really severe substance use disorder. Those are the 4 categories of people that will fit into this tailored plan that the LMEs will be operating or managing. So just think about, I think about the LME, if you think of it as a building with the administrative and operational pieces on the bottom, there's levels of the floors in my building in my head. So the bottom is the structure of the whole entity. The middle is people who are receiving Medicaid or state-funded services. Right now, that's called Medicaid Direct Services, another Medicaid term, and that's where everybody's sitting right now. And in the future, there will be a tailored plan level on top where they'll move some people up into that, and just think about it as a more structured health insurance plan that provides very tailored services. Think tailored plan provides tailored services for people with pretty intense needs. Mm-hmm. So the building analogy helps me try to keep it straight in my head. Ultimately, it's the same set of people, the same set of humans organizing and managing all of this Medicaid money that comes into our state to provide all of these services at different levels.
That's a great way to think about it, with the building and the levels. I like that.
It helps me keep it straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So switching topics now, let's talk a little bit about Innovations Waiver. We hear from a lot of our families about the Innovations Waiver. There's a lot of questions. Can you talk a little bit, and again, at a high level, explain what the Innovations Waiver is and why is it so important?
Yeah, Innovations Waiver is big because it provides a lot of services for people who are deemed eligible and receive a slot. So high level, this starts at the federal level. Every state has these. They're called home and community-based waivers. In North Carolina, this one is called the Innovations Waiver. There's several others in North Carolina, but this is the main one for folks with IDD. And think of it as it is a way to waive some of the rules. That's why it's called a waiver, so that people who would normally be considered for institutional care or placement in a state institution can now receive these services to enable them to live in the community. So it is chock full of services and supports for folks in this state. One of the issues we have in North Carolina is not enough slots for people. They're called slots. We have about 15,000, close to 16,000 people currently funded for Innovations Waiver slots, and we have about as many on the wait list too. So we only have about half the people funded who need these services, and the wait list continues to grow, and some people wait 10 or 12 years on these services. It is there's a lot of money in Innovations Waiver services, which is why the legislature has trouble funding more slots every year. And this is each year we hope to get, and we try to advocate for more and more slots to be funded to get people off that waiting list and to get them the services they need in order to live in the community. Think about if you have a family member with really significant needs, you likely have a parent or another family member staying home to meet those needs, to provide those services, and not being able to go to work and be a part of the community and earn a living to contribute income to their family. So this is an economic driver too in North Carolina. When we have an innovations waiver slot funded, for instance, that means not only can mom and dad or sister and brother go to work, or whoever's caring for that person can go to work, but also it enables that individual or that family to have direct support staff to help them with the supports that they need throughout the day, living in their own home and in the community. And there's a variety of different types of supports that people can get through the innovations waiver. We desperately need more slots, and the ARC is advocating for more slots every year, every single year. We go to the legislature and ask for more slots. So that's kind of high level overview of innovations waiver. I would encourage people to get on that list. You do have to be deemed eligible because you are at an institutional level of care or at risk of being placed in an institution. That is one of the qualifying factors. So if a person has fairly significant disabilities or limitations with their IDD, they should go ahead and apply for the innovations waiver. And they can do that through the LMEs that we talked about earlier, via Partners, Alliance, and Trillium.
Okay. All right. Again, we're going to switch topics again, moving into one of our last of the top 5. Can you talk a little bit about the 1915 I-Services? What is that?
Yeah, what is that? That's another, if you I think of Medicaid pots, right? Although it's one big budget, I think of pots. So 1915I is a Medicaid pot of funding that our state decided to go for, and Centers for Medicaid and Medicaid Services at the federal level said, yes, we want you to do this. We will do this with you. We'll partner with you for this. And many states use 1915I services. 1915I is just the general descriptor, the kind of definition of where the money comes from, right? 1915I services are new in North Carolina. And we have been trying to launch these services because think about it, if you got 15 or 16,000 people on the waiting list for the innovations waiver, they need services or they wouldn't be on the waiting list. So what can we get them? Several of the LMEs have worked hard over the years trying to get services to people who are on the waiting list, and some have done better than others. This is a pot of Medicaid money specifically for community-based services that these people will become eligible for, and you don't have to be on the innovations waiver wait list to be eligible for 1915I services. So these are services for people with IDD, TBI, significant mental illness, serious substance use disorders as well. For folks with IDD, there are 4 main types of services they can get through 1915I, and those are respite, which lots of people need, supported employment, community living and supports, which is just supporting me in my home and community surroundings. And then there's a community transition service for people who want to move. Let's say they want to move out of their family home or out of a group home or some other place into a more independent setting. Maybe they're going to have a roommate with an apartment or something. There's some funds there to help fund that move. To be eligible for 1915I services, you need a care manager, a tailored care manager, when we can talk about that later as well, or a care coordinator from an LME who will do what we call an independent assessment to determine whether or not you need these services. That gets done, it's fairly short, quick, and easy compared to some of the other assessments we have to do in the state. We send that into the LME, again, those 4 that we talked about, send that into the LME. The state has a contracted vendor that looks at all of this and decides, yes, you're eligible, or no, you're not. Typically, if you have IDD, you're going to be eligible for 1915I services, and then could work with your care manager to develop a plan around those services, figure out a provider in the community who's going to provide those services, and determine how many hours a week you might need of each of those services that you want to try to get. That plan goes back to the LME, and then it goes through a process of them determining what's called utilization management. One section of, remember the building with the floors, there's a floor for utilization management, and that's where they manage the care, and they determine, oh, does Holly need 74 hours a week of service? We don't think so. That's too much. We're going to give her 20 hours of service. And that's an extreme example, but that's kind of what utilization management does. They look at the need versus the amount projected of service to be provided. And then they approve or not approve. And if they don't approve, then the individual or the family has appeal rights. So that's kind of a long explanation for 1915I, but it is a new thing that North Carolina is launching. There's a lot of confusion about it out there, and we could go into a lot more detail later.
And we will, as promised, we will make another video focusing just on 1915I services. So we'll stay tuned for that one. We do have a bonus question, a bonus topic. You did mention care management. Let's go ahead and delve into that a little bit further. What is care management?
Yeah, I love talking about care management because it's one of the best things our state has done for folks with IDD in a long, long time. The official term is tailored care management because it comes out of that tailored plan. Again, the tailored plan in the LME building doesn't launch until July 1st. But a piece of that tailored care management actually began in December of 2022. So we've been doing care management in this state for, I think that's 16 months now. Mm-hmm. And each of the 4 LMEs we've talked about provides tailored care management. I'm going to call it just care management for short, because most people relate to it as that, and that tailored word can become confusing for folks. So all the LMEs provide care management, but they're also contracting it out to care management agencies. The ARC, for instance, is a care management agency, and advanced medical homes, which are typically physicians' practices, fairly large practices that are already trying to help people navigate the system. They may have a social worker on staff, for instance, who's doing this work. So care management is a broad service, and it is an optional service. Now, if you have IDD and you're receiving services through an LME, you are likely eligible for care management. Just right off the bat, you don't have to choose it. You do have to choose your provider. You have a choice. Do you want to get your care management from the LME, or do you want to get your care management from one of those advanced medical homes or one of those care management agencies in the community? There are over 70 community-based providers across the state providing care management. You can also opt out. You don't have to receive care management. So you're not obligated. It's not mandatory to receive care management. We think it's a really good idea for most people. Right. If you have the Innovations Waiver, it's a really good idea because you have a lot of stuff that needs to be coordinated, and that's what the care manager will do for you. However, for the Innovations Waiver, you can opt out still and just receive the typical care coordination that you've been receiving from the LME. So there's some different choices to make there. What you want to think about is, what would care management do for me? I know a lot of families spend a lot of time coordinating services for their family member, whether it's a son, daughter, sister, brother, someone they're caring for. It's a lot of work. I often say in North Carolina, we make this system as complicated as we can. and that's not by design. But it's become that way. Yeah. And to have someone who can help you navigate all that and coordinate everything in your life, that's what a care manager would do. care managers can coordinate your community-based services and integrate those with your medical services. So if you have medical needs, they're talking to medical staff in your life as well. They're making all that stuff work together. If you're in school and you need IEP assistance, they're talking with schools and they're helping you with IEP planning. If you are getting supported employment from Voc Rehab, they're talking with Voc Rehab and integrating all that into your plan. Ultimately, they're going to do a huge, complete assessment of your whole life so they understand all your needs. They're going to do a big care management plan, integrate all those people in your life, providers of all different sorts, family, friends, whoever you choose to have in that, integrate all that into a plan of care for you, which kind of guides all of your services and how they work together. It is an incredible opportunity for a lot of people who really need this service in their life. Care managers can also, and do often, all day long, connect people to community-based resources. So if folks need food, if folks need housing, if they need transportation, medical transportation, if they're in unsafe environments, there are so many things that care managers help with on a day-to-day basis that help improve just health in general, but quality of life altogether. There are amazing success stories that's happening in care management right now, and only 16 months in. It's a service that is still growing. It's a service that people don't know a lot about, don't understand a lot about. We've got some videos on our website trying to help people understand kind of family to family, what does this mean in my daily life and how would this look? Really encourage people to explore the opportunity of care management. It can do so much for individuals and families and really lift that load off of them that they've been carrying for years, because we all know there's been no one in the system to help families coordinate this chaotic system out there that we have. I mean, Matt, you just think about, you have to go to DSS to apply for Medicaid. You have to go to Social Security to apply for SSI or SSDI. You have to work with the LME to get your services. If you've got a care manager, they're helping you navigate all of that. All the disjointed sections of our system, they can pull it together for you. We often talk about the care manager being the quarterback of the football team, right? Running the plays, getting it down the field, making progress. So encourage everybody to look into care management and consider that, and look at your options for providers out there. They are everywhere, and it's evolving. It's evolving. It's still in its adolescent stages as a service, but I think it will be huge foundational service for this system for most people.
Right, absolutely. We do encourage everyone to look into care management. It is an incredible service. I want to ask finally, just our final thing here on the video today. We've got a question from a family, and that is, what is it that the ARC of North Carolina can do for my child who's been diagnosed with IDD?
It's a great question. We often trip ourselves up trying to be everything to everybody. We can't be everything to everybody, but I think what we can do is show families the world they're about to walk into. When they have a child with IDD or a new diagnosis, we can help them understand this complicated, difficult system. We can connect them with others who have similar experiences, and we can educate and help them understand and support them in that process. There's a process that families go through, and I think we can be very supportive from birth to death through those processes. I think it's all about education and understanding.
Right. Well, Lisa, I want to thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you
Sure.
talking about the top 5 things regarding Medicaid that people with IDD need to know. As we've been saying, we will be making more videos about the topics that you've heard today. We want you to keep coming back to our YouTube channel, and also make sure you go to our website. We've got a lot of great information and resources that you can use. Our website is www.arcnc.org. That's www.arcnc.org. Thanks, everybody. That's it for today.
Thanks, Holly.